Okay. Well, let's see. Rabbi, I'm Arlene Fisher, and I'm part of the Torah Fund team that we have. You just met Shira and Naomi Feinberg. Naomi, raise your hand. She's
Hi, Naomi.
part of our Torah Fund team.
Hi, everyone. Good to be with you.
Where are you? You're in California?
I'm in California, so it's still morning and I haven't had brunch yet. So.
Oh, okay. We're enjoying high tea while we're going to be listening to you, but I would like to introduce everybody and good afternoon. And on behalf of Shira Goldberg, Naomi Feinberg, and myself, our Torah Fund team, I welcome everyone to this year's Torah Fund event. This year's Torah Fund theme is Am Yisrael Chai. The people of Israel live. These three words have become an expression of Jewish solidarity for both Israel and the continuity of the Jewish people. Through Torah Fund, we back these important efforts and demonstrate our support as we help ensure the future of worldwide Jewish communities. Am Yisrael Chai represents our strength and endurance as a people. Today's event is a thank you to all of you and the others that we thank them. They're out there as well. We had over $11,000 that we have raised for Torah Fund, which I know I'm very proud of what our sisterhood does. There are 13 sisterhoods in our region. We raise the most of all the sisterhoods, and it is. So that's a huge accomplishment. Today's event is a thank you to all of our benefactors, our guardians, and our associate patrons or contributors. We are so appreciative of your support. Now it is my pleasure to turn the program over to Naomi, who will introduce our guest speaker. Good job.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're enjoying all the teapots we have out to decorate. Just one reminder, the teapots are not to take home as souvenirs. They're mine, they come with me. Sometimes we have centerpieces that you can take back home with you, but not today, I'm sorry. I wanted to start out by saying that I am a strong supporter of Torah Fund with a close personal connection to the Jewish Theological Seminary. My father was ordained there in 1942, and my mother graduated earlier from the Teachers Institute, which is now called the List College of Jewish Studies. In addition, I was the first baby born to a rabbinical student and his wife. So I thank all of you for supporting the Torah Fund. Thank you. Our guest today is Rabbi Amy Eilberg, who was the first woman ordained by JTS. Rabbi Eilberg was born in 1954 and raised in Philadelphia. Her father was a congressional representative from Pennsylvania, and she has continued his interest in community service. She attended Brandeis University and studied Talmud before the conservative movement decided to ordain women. Following that decision, she studied at JTS and was ordained in 1985. She first served as a chaplain at Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis, where I and my family were living at the time. And later was assistant rabbi at Har Zion in Philadelphia. She then decided that her true passion was caring for the ill and troubled. Rabbi Eilberg has developed a fulfilling career as a spiritual advisor and director, a peace and justice educator, and a teacher of Musar. Now, when I saw that in her biography, I said, what is Musar? Well, Musar, it turns out, is a classical Jewish system of spiritual development developed in the Middle Ages And I thought that really sounds interesting. I think I'm going to have to investigate it a little more. Maybe you can suggest a book. She currently chairs 2 anti-racism committees, one at Eitz Chaim in Palo Alto, California, and one for the conservative movement. She also writes widely on all of these topics. It is with great pleasure that I introduce Rabbi Eilberg.
Well, thank you so much, Naomi. It's very fun to hear your conservative movement accomplishments and creds. I guess that's your parents who gave birth to you. That's a great story. I love it. And it's lovely to be with you because I don't know how many of you were there, but I brought, let's see, why can't I remember? I guess in March. Was it in March? Yeah, early March. Um, I brought a group of rabbis, conservative rabbis and friends to the South to attend the broad, multiracial, multi-faith gathering to observe and actually celebrate the 60th anniversary of what came to be known as Bloody Sunday in Selma. And conservative rabbis, we knew, we needed to spend some place for Shabbat. And frankly, most of us didn't know anything about the Jewish community in Birmingham, with the exception of Rabbi Randy Konigsberg, who obviously knew very well what a wonderful community it was. So I don't know, I'm not sure how, without much knowledge, we chose to spend Shabbat in Birmingham, and we're just delightfully surprised to learn what a wonderful community it is. And we were, all of us to a person, just very, very grateful for the hospitality that was extended to us, and delighted to see the vibrancy of the Jewish community at your shul. So it's good to be back, if only, on the screen. So I was invited to speak about whatever I wanted. That's maybe a dangerous thing to invite a rabbi to do. But I have to say that really what's on my mind and heart right now is the 40th anniversary of the ordination of women in the conservative movement. In late May, at the JTS graduation, the seminary awarded me an honorary doctorate. I mean, the seminary really decided to celebrate the 40th anniversary of ordination, and that celebration has been carried through the Rabbinical Assembly, all year long, and it's kind of been a movement-wide celebration, which of course is not remotely just about me, but about all the women who have served in so many different capacities, and especially as rabbis and community leaders in the conservative movement, and thinking about what specific kinds of contributions the women leaders have made, and perhaps what are the lessons of the experience of the ordination of women and the inclusion of women into the conservative rabbinate, what lessons that process might offer us for inclusion and welcoming of new groups of formerly marginalized students and leaders in the movement. So, in fact, this afternoon there was a nice little celebration in New York in late May, and this afternoon where my husband is making me a party here at home, where the friends in California are going to come and cheer for the 40th anniversary of the ordination of women. So that's clearly what's on my mind and heart today. So I hope a few reflections about that will be of interest to you. As you can imagine, a 40th anniversary of anything evokes a lot of reflection. So I really found myself thinking a lot about, with wonder, I mean, how could it be that I'm old enough to, I've been a grown-up for 40 years, which of course I have, and to have been in my chosen career, a chosen calling for all of that time, and even more so a really tremendous amount of gratitude and awe for all the things that I've been able to do. I've had perhaps an unusual rabbinate, not just because I'm a woman, but because most of the roles that I've had, I did serve a conservative congregation for 1 year, but for the most part, I have chosen non-congregational work in pastoral care, in hospitals and hospice, and then in peacemaking work, working on peace and dialogue issues within the Jewish community, and also working on issues of social justice within the Jewish community and beyond. And all of that while being a rabbi. These weren't career changes; they were just slight shifts in my focus as a rabbi. So. I'm immensely grateful that my rabbinate has been big enough to hold these different different focal points for my work, and so I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for all of that. As I was anticipating the graduation ceremony at the ceremony where I would get my honorary degree, this was in late May, I was surprised, frankly, to see that a lot of memories surfaced that were negative, that were painful. People often ask me, wasn't it hard to be the first? And, what kinds of things did you encounter? And of course, there were frustrations and there were moments of conflict and all of that. But at the time, I'm honestly not sure why. I felt kind of patient. I would tell people all the time, this is a huge change for people to see an authority figure, a religious authority figure, in a female body when they were so accustomed to seeing only men in those roles, that this was going to take time and change is hard and all of that. And I really believed that the change was going to come. And so when sort of a body of negative experiences started accumulating in my life and in the lives of other women rabbis as they came along, and when often we would have meetings and we would share what are now called microaggressions, right? That language doesn't exist anymore, but what I would call sort of nasty comments or obnoxious comments, silly, foolish comments that people would make. Oh, I've never kissed my rabbi before, and real questions about, is a woman rabbi allowed to wear open-toed shoes on the bima, which anybody who worries about that issue, I think, is not spending enough time listening to what the rabbi has to say, assuming that particular rabbi has good things to say about Torah and about Jewish community. But specifically in my time at the seminary, I suddenly had all these memories come about moments when professors said things that were disrespectful. There were many professors who were tremendously supportive, some of whom are still alive and whom I've had the chance to thank, and some of whom are gone. And I thank them in my heart tremendously. But there were also expressions of disrespect, and a lot of those memories came back to me because it was part of the story, and went with the territory of being in the first generation of women rabbis. If there are women doctors or women lawyers or women in the group who were among the first generation, twice as that hand, who were in the early generation or two of women in your profession that was previously all male. I'm sure you had similar experiences, but perhaps it was especially painful because these were rabbis and Jewish teachers acting in this way. The memory that came up for me most strongly was around my senior sermon. I don't know how many of you know about the little ordeal called the senior sermon. Every graduating rabbinical school since every rabbinical student since, I don't know, since time immemorial, during their junior year was assigned a particular parasha, and the graduating student gives a sermon. At the time, it was in the seminary synagogue, which was where everybody davened. Now there are so many different places where people daven. The community is kind of, split in different places and Shabbat morning, but in those days, everybody davened in the seminary synagogue, including the senior Talmud faculty who were very scary people. So it was like a, bat mitzvah, only more so because you were a grown up, and it felt like the consequences were greater. Somebody yelled out and said, you did. I don't know if that, I think, yeah, that had happened rarely, but the fear was somebody would yell out and say you had made a mistake or whatever. But aware that my senior sermon was the first given by a woman, I spoke on Parashat Vayakhel, Pekudei, which included just a few comments about the unique contributions of women to the construction of the desert sanctuary of the Mishkan. And I put that together with a book that was all the rage at the time. This was 1985, a book called by a woman named Carol Gilligan, a social psychologist, a book called In a Different Voice, which laid out kind of the latest research about how women were socialized to be different from men, how little girls were already at a young age socialized, behaving on in play context differently than little boys due to socialization. So I kind of drashed on that book In a Different Voice and offered some comments and predictions, I guess, some of which turned out to be true, about the unique contributions that women would be able to make in the rabbinate. And as the protocol went, you wrote a draft of the sermon, and then you shared it with your homiletics class. That's a funny word. That means it's a class about preaching, about sermon giving. And you would share the sermon with a professor who would give you their commentary, and then you would revise, and then you'd be ready to deliver the sermon. And the professor who read my sermon in advance, who was a good guy, had been in favor of the ordination of women. I had known him for a long time. He really had a big heart. Sat me down and he asked me a couple of little questions about this or that in the sermon, but then he sort of leaned back in his chair and he said, so I want to see if I understand what you're trying to express in this sermon. We let you in, and now you want to be different too. Sometimes people laugh at this story, I think rightly. Sometimes people just groan. In a sense, the man's no longer living. In a sense, he was speaking out of, maybe at that time, even the people who had been in favor of the ordination of women thought that all that needed to be done was to let women in because it was an injustice. And it was counterproductive. Talk about Am Yisrael Chai. It was counterproductive to say to half of the Hebrew school kids and B'nai Mitzvah kids and high school U.S. wires, you can do anything in the world. You can contribute to any field of endeavor, but not the rabbinate. Half of you, not the rabbinate, because women aren't allowed. So that injustice needed to be rectified. But that's a very narrow, we now talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, which I firmly believe are deep values. They're actually deeply Jewish values, although people can disagree about how those programs should be structured. If you want to let in a new group, it's really a mistake to say to them, we want you to be just like us. Like that's the price of your coming in. We want you to, when you sing, we want you to sing in a low voice. We want you to wear suits. We want you to essentially be clones of what we were before. It's a very narrow definition of diversity. And I knew at the time, well, that's why I was giving the sermon, was to say, we're here and I don't want to scare you too much. I think I tried to not be too scary about it. We're going to bring different perspectives. And it was already true that in the first year in 1984, 85, when women were officially in the rabbinical school, the conversations in class were different because women, based on their own experience, not every single one, not every woman is the same, of course, any more than every man is the same, but that many of the women were asking questions that had not been asked before, that were offering drashot that were different than had been offered before because their experience was different. And real inclusion is to say, not only do we have we opened the door to you, but we're really honestly curious and interested and excited about the new perspectives that you may fill in that were absent before. As some feminist scholars have written, the wisdom of half the Jewish people, after all. We didn't want just half the Jewish people. We wanted the wisdom of the whole Jewish people. So in my thinking then, now at the time of that it's been 40 years, and there are now, I keep meaning, there are a couple of hundred or maybe 300 women rabbis. I can't believe with all the hoopla, I haven't checked on how many there actually are, but several hundred for sure, just in the conservative movement, many more in the reform movement and Reconstructionist movement. There's now much to be learned from the experience of the seminary and the movements taking in women rabbis and learning how to accommodate this change, and not only to be okay with it, but to be genuinely positive and curious and welcoming and celebratory about it, now that we have, at least potentially, the whole conservative Jewish community available to offer their wisdom. In our days, we have new groups of formerly marginalized students. We have Jews of color in the rabbinical school, and certainly in USY and in synagogues all around the movement, whose perspectives have not been part of the conversation before. We have gay, queer, and trans students. The gay students, where the decision was made in, I want to say 2008, by really pioneering decision by Chancellor Arnie Eisen, to open the doors of the rabbinical school to openly gay students. Prior to that, there had been gay students and gay rabbis, but they were closeted. They didn't reveal their identities. So we now have not quite a generation, the beginnings of a generation of gay and now trans students. At the graduation last week, there were, I think, 2 of the graduating rabbinical students were trans students. We have disabled students. We've had, various ways. They have tremendous abilities, but they also have some physical abilities. We've had there are now a couple of conservative rabbis who are blind, a couple of conservative rabbis with other kinds of physical disabilities who use wheelchairs and who have special medical needs, which require some kinds of accommodations. But these are people who also have, boy, put a piece of Torah in front of a person like that who has a different kind of experience. And you often hear really remarkable, we who are not able-bodied, are able to hear really interesting things. So I'm really hoping, and I actually tried in a very nice way to say, I didn't speak at the graduation, but I was invited to speak there was a small luncheon following the academic commencement. And I did say, I think in a nice way, like, we've done it once. We've gone through the process of not only admitting women rabbis, but really learning how to make it a learning experience for everyone, how to really embrace how the seminary and the movement can be enriched by the perspectives of people who had been excluded before. Let's do better this time. Let's do better with the gay and trans students, and with the students of color, and with the disabled students, and students who have different kinds of perspectives. There are students now with different perspectives on Israel and on anti-Semitism and on all kinds of things. And the first impulse of a small c conservative institution is often to slam them down. I mean, after all, we're the teachers, we're the elders, we need to teach you. Whatever you come with that's different from what we believe has got to be wrong. And sometimes that's the case. And of course, students come to the seminary in order to immerse themselves in the wisdom of Jewish tradition. And sometimes these students who are way younger than I am, who are younger than most of the leaders are, know something about they know some things about the present and the future that the elders can't know because we're not living in the same world that they live in yet. They can see kind of over a horizon that we can't yet see. And so they have things that they can teach us. And though even though some of those conversations can be difficult and have been difficult, they've been challenging. They're literally challenging. In some cases, the formerly marginalized students have critiques, just as the women had critiques about things that we noticed in Torah that were enormously painful, that had been painful. Some men had noticed before, but that hadn't been as painful to the men in most cases as they were to the women. So we all learned new things about Torah that we hadn't been able to learn before. I feel confident that there's movement in this direction, that the movement has done an incredible job now moving through these 40 years. And first maybe dragging, not quite kicking and screaming, but with hesitancy, but then moving toward really genuine embrace and celebration. And I pray that the same thing will happen with other groups of students, and that we will all be enriched by the new wisdom, by the new Torah that emerges in those encounters. Your theme is Am Yisrael Chai. And recently, for obvious reasons, we've been thinking about that a lot. I mean, almost as a battle cry, as a cry asserting our strength in the face of attacks of various kinds. And I want to suggest that Am Yisrael Chai is also a challenge to all of us to open our minds and our hearts, and to the extent that we can act in service of these values, to really commit to the ongoing vitality, chayut, vitality of the Jewish people, which shifts over time. We as conservative Jews know this. This is it's our raison d'etre to notice how Judaism productively shifts over time. I pray that we will continue to be inspired by all kinds of students and all kinds of new leaders, and all kinds of Jews who have old and new, conventional and unconventional contributions to be made to the body of Torah and to the body of Jewish people. And in so doing, the well-being and the vitality of the Jewish people will be enhanced. Thanks.
Does anyone have questions for Rabbi Eilberg? Diane, I think maybe it'll help if you come up to the mic. The mic, I don't think the mic will move far enough. So come on up. This is Diane Slaughter, always with excellent questions. So thank you.
Good. Hi, Diane.
Hi, Rabbi. First, I want to say that I was at services when Rabbi Hinken invited you to come up and lead us. And folks, this lady has a beautiful voice. So I hope that we'll get to hear you sing before we say goodbye for the afternoon. First, I just want to say congratulations to you on your achievements. It's really overwhelming to think about. But secondly, I don't know if this is a fair question or if it really fits with what you're saying. But in recent months, I've had a couple of women make the following comment to me. They've said something like, I know there are a lot of marginalized groups out there. There's the trans, and there's the women who've lost their privileges of making decisions about their own body. But my real concern is in only two places now. These two places and these two places only. I really can't focus on anything else. My concerns are with anti-Semitism in the United States and the safety of our people in the land of Israel. And I really am speechless when I hear someone say that. But now that I've heard it twice, it's sort of like, beginning to make me wonder if this is I don't know where it comes from, and I don't know how to respond to it. So help me out here, Rabbi.
I'd be interested to hear. Can you say just for a moment, if I'm allowed to ask you a question? What do you mean when you say you're speechless in response?
Because so I tried once. I said, I'm taking a class with Rabbi Hinken. We just learned in this class, and I can't remember specifically what the teaching was, but that if you have a friend who has fallen and you have an enemy who is, in trouble, the Jewish tradition teaches us that you're supposed to go to the one you don't like before you go to the one that you care so much about. Is that right?
Yeah, they're texts in the Torah, the verses in the Torah about if you see you're riding along the road and your enemy's donkey, imagine, that's full, it's carrying all kinds of groceries and products and whatever, falls in the road. It's a mitzvah. You're obligated to go roll up your sleeves and go help them gather the stuff and raise the donkey back. We have stuff about how to extend ourselves to enemies. So, I see. So that was your response. So, my response is similar. Look, I think it's no mystery where that view comes from. The only thing I can think about is anti-Semitism and what's happening in Israel. Some of us have been directly impacted. Others of us, by anti-Semitism, others of us have just been afraid. Some of us have loved ones who were killed on October 7th, who were abducted on October 7th, and all of us were traumatized. These were profoundly terrifying experiences, and they're not over, as recent weeks have shown us. So there's no mystery why those issues are so close to the heart. And I think, someone who's just been attacked, literally someone who was in Boulder when the firebombs were thrown, I wouldn't go dray their cup, if you speak a little Yiddish. I wouldn't go give them a lecture about you really should be thinking about the equality of trans students. It's not the time. They just suffered a tremendous attack. But as a group, we have to be bigger than that. Our minds and our hearts have to be bigger than that. Both because our tradition teaches us to, as you suggested, that we're not only for ourselves. Remember Hillel's famous, dictum in Pirkei Avot, "Ein ani li mili." If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Who's going to, protect the Jews if not us? Ukshe ani la'atzmi ma'ani. But if I'm only for myself, what am I? What kind of Jew am I? What kind of human being am I? So for those of us who are living with our fear, for sure, but not, in acute, trauma, need to really push a little bit past the comfort zone of, I'm just going to close my mind to anything else, any other issues. These are the only issues that I can deal with. We can't afford that. We can't afford to only deal with those issues, because as many national Jewish leaders are saying, the person I follow most closely on this subject is Amy Spitalnik. You might remember her as the person who brought the suit against the white nationalist attackers on Charleston some years ago, and she's now the head of the Jewish Council for Public Affairs. She has a very eloquent message about, we care about Jewish safety profoundly. And in America, for sure, history tells us that the way for Jews to be safe is for everyone to be safe. Don't tell me I only care about Jewish safety. I don't really care about Black safety. I don't care about the safety of brown people. I don't care. I can't. I can only focus on Jewish safety. And she says, what's going to keep us safe? What's actually going to keep us safe is we collectively, if we Jews press on our discomfort, and open our minds a little bit to say, how can we work together with all kinds of people to make a country where more people are safe, to make a world where more people are safe? I think that's a more, I actually think that's a more Jewish, in terms of values commitment, that's a more Jewish position. It's not always comfortable. Nobody can do it all the time. But anti-Semitism isn't going away. So if we can only think about anti-Semitism and nothing else, while anti-Semitism still exists, then we'll never be able to work on anything else. So, so that's my view, is we need to do more. We need to be able to do more than, at least some of us need to be able to do more than one thing at one time. Thanks so much for the question. I think it's really important.
Thank you. Great answer.
I don't know if you heard Diane say, thank you, great answer. And that was a very moving answer, and exactly what we all need to lift our spirits with all the issues with DEI and being tied to colonialism. Now it becomes also a harder conversation. So I appreciate the answer a lot as well. Does anybody else have any questions? Anybody? All right, you know what, Arlene, I'm gonna ask one last question then. Can I ask, outside of what you spoke about, that's painful to hear about for women, but it makes me glad to think that you feel that the conservative movement is able to expand and welcome. I wonder just what you think in terms of the whole conservative movement and how it's obviously getting smaller within America. And what do you think, like, do you think new voices can help grow it, or times are kind of changing? And I feel like you have like Hadar that has egalitarian values too. And to me, that's all part of the conservative movement, but yet it's not anymore. So what do you see for us to still stay strong in America?
So a lot of people smarter than I am are thinking about this. It's a huge question. I'll share just a couple of thoughts. One is that for as long as I have been aware of the conservative movement, which now goes back about 60 years, people have been worried that the conservative movement was gonna disappear. We were always kind of self-doubting. Right? I'm thinking of, who's the cartoon character, Charlie Brown or somebody like that. We were always, worried that, we weren't doing very well. And there's some, numbers that that attest to that. A lot of conservative synagogues are aging and so on. So one thing is that the rumors of the demise of the conservative movement have been around for a long time, and we should just keep that in perspective. The other is, I do think we are in the process of a profound generational change. In some ways, the conservative Jewish community that we know was built for the needs of the community of American Jews in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Our buildings were built, for the needs and anticipated needs of the community in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And some of those things are not bearing out, because a lot of young people, as I'm sure my children's age, perhaps your children's age, young adults, or to the extent that they define them, to the extent that they live vibrant Jewish lives, maybe living them differently. And the conservative shul may not be the first place. That's actually true of all three of my kids, that they have vibrant Jewish lives in very different ways, and none of them are actually based in conservative shuls, although they were all raised in conservative shuls. So some people think a change is hard. So that's why your question is related to what I was talking about. Change is scary. So what's going to happen if these young people, like, what's going to happen to all these shuls? What's going to happen to all these buildings? What's going to happen to all the institutions that we've built? And it's possible that this next generation is going to bring something different and better. It may be that we're going to need some different structures. It may be that the synagogue of the 50s is not going to, of the 1950s, is not going to serve the conservative Jewish community of the 21st century. And we're at least as creative now, probably more creative now, as we were back then. And if changes need to be made, particularly if there's openness to those changes, and I know that in the movement there are a lot of people really thinking hard and thinking creatively about how are we not going to be sort of be dragged along kicking and screaming with the changes, but how can we recognize the changes, recognizing what the challenges are and what do we need to do differently, and also recognizing that there may be new potential here for structures that we never imagined before. So that's really what I think is going to happen. I think there's going to be tremendous change, and it can be for the good. And I'm not sure that the fear can restrict our creative thinking, but the curiosity can expand our creative thinking. So that's what I expect to see. That's what I hope for my children and grandchildren who'll go on after I'm gone.
Thank you. That's an equally hopeful answer for all of us. We're gonna bring Harleen back up to close out, but I just personally want to say thank you before Harleen does as well.
Rabbi, I feel like we have been in the presence of greatness, and we are so honored to have had you as our Torah Fund guest speaker. And thank you for gracing and taking the time to visit with us Southern gals and sharing your wisdom and your hope for the future of conservative Judaism. So thank you very, very much for being with us today.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
If you'd like to, I'm just going to close the meeting with some thank yous. If you'd like to stay on, you're welcome to stay on. If you'd like to, hang on, that's fine too.
You know what? One thing I'd love to put in. I don't remember who it was who said, "Oh, Musar. What is this Musar thing? I'd like to know about Musar." Yes. I would be happy. There's a whole library. I mean, if you Google MUSSAR, you'll get lots of stuff. So 2 recommendations. One is Google the Musar Institute, MUSSAR. It's a wonderful organization, and there's all kinds of online information and all kinds of educational offerings. And the founder of the Musar Institute, a man named Alan Morinis, Morinis, has written a bunch of books. In fact, if you Google books on Musar, his books will probably come up. First, a good place to start would be a book called Everyday Holiness, which I really highly recommend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
In closing, thank yous to Teresa. She's the one that prepared this beautiful proper tea that we have all enjoyed. And thank you to Naomi for bringing the teapots, and she's has an accounting. You're going home. We'll help you to the bar so that we maybe use them again. But thank you so much for sharing your beautiful, pieces that you have in your home. And to Marilyn with her charm that she always shows and her love. And thank you for greeting everybody as they've come in. And lastly, I want to give an update on one of our own. And I'm talking about Julia Goldberg, daughter of Shira. Julia just received her master's in Jewish education from the Davidson School of Education. And if that's not enough, a master's in Bible from the Gershon Kext Graduate School. And what's next for Julia? She is going to be a student at the Jewish Theological Seminary. So exciting. And so exciting. And your youngest is going to share that good news too.
He was going to List College where Julia went. That's the undergraduate program with Columbia at the seminary.
So it's wonderful. How many congregations can say that we have the people from our congregation going to the conservative movement's education? I found that astonishing and very proud. So
we also have another connection now, Naomi.
I have a great niece who has also been accepted at the seminary for this coming year. And she and Julia are going to get together before they both go, so they'll each know someone in their class.
Wonderful, wonderful. What is her name and where is she from?
Her name's Rebecca Schwartz, and she's from Needham, Massachusetts.
Wonderful.
She's spending the summer as a section chief at a Vermont day camp in Massachusetts.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Very nice.
Very proud. These are, yes, very proud. Not just moments. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Please take good, there's plates. If you would like to take some desserts and sandwiches home, please do so. Thank you all so much.